My Lords, I rise chiefly to speak to Amendment 21A, which appears in my name. And here we are again addressing Clause 1, and I'm going to park to one side the whole question of whether Clause 1 should be there at all. But what this amendment seeks to do is bring in what I think we had an earlier discussion about what schools should be, and that we shouldn't just be talking about structures, but what they should actually be doing, and how they should fit into our broader social framework. And what this amendment is an attempt, and I would very much stress it's a preliminary attempt, to actually look at how we might see schools as part of a community, not just schools as an institution that are turning out pupils to go into the workforce at the end of their time there. And so with that in mind, there's three elements of this that I've attempted in this draft. The first one, is the consultation, engagement and co-production with pupils, parents and the wider community of what the school is. And I think if we're talking about multi-academy trusts, and as many noble lords have said, multi-academy trusts potentially scattered all around the country, as some of them already are, how does that actually get embedded in the community, and how does the community contribute to the trust? And so this is an attempt, writing in Clause 1, of setting standards to say that the school must be part of a community. And I think it's really interesting. I actually went through the bill and did an analysis of the appearances of the words pupils, parents and community. And the word pupil appears 58 times. Quite often the bill is talking about safeguarding, it's talking about welfare, all things we couldn't possibly disagree with. There's quite a lot, of course, about attendance at schools, which is something I'll be getting to later. But there is nowhere in the bill when it talks about what role pupils might have in deciding their own education, in having a democratic role in the structure of their own school. And it would be my representation to your Lordship's House that if we want to be a democratic country, we want democracy to start in schools, and that pupils are the ones who are most expert of what the experience is like of being a pupil at a school. Now, if we get to the word parent, it appears 7 times in the bill. 2 are about the rights of parents with pupils, with children at religious schools. There's about a duty to explain the attendance policies of schools, and a duty of parents to provide info to schools. But again, there is nothing about the role of parents in running, deciding, guiding, acting in schools. Now, I know there are amendments in other sections of the bill trying to ensure that there are parent governors, and that's one way of doing that. But that, of course, is by definition only a very small number of people. And this is an attempt to say that parents should have a much bigger and broader role, not just in those. And I have myself been a governor and seen parent governors facing huge wadges of paperwork like that. Not every parent is going to be able to engage in that way that you get as a governor. But parents should be involved. And I think it's particularly interesting, the word community. It only appears a few times in the bill, and every reference is particularly to the category of community schools. There is no reference in the bill to the actual community in which a school is placed. So that's what this amendment is seeking to do. The first clause U here looks at seeing a school as a co-production of all of the parts of a community. V looks at academies and proprietors reflecting the needs. So this is actually what the structures, the multi-academy trusts, the trust governorship is doing. And W looks at the contribution that the school makes to the whole life of the community. And just to bring a practical example for this, the school at which I was a governor served a very, very poor, disadvantaged community and a very diverse community. And just as an example of the kind of thing that the school can do on a very small scale, but the school organised a number of events where parents got together and shared their different craft skills. Now, many of these parents had no language in common, but this is the way that people made friendships within a community across their different language groups, across their different backgrounds, and this was helping to build a community within the activities of the school. And this is the sort of thing that a school needs to be doing. Now, that's just me making assertions about that, but I want to go back to a few examples of how there's been much discussion about this in civil society and indeed in activities of the government. The Royal Society of the Arts has recently been running a whole Rethinking Education series of events, and one of the key arguments, theses behind that was that schools are civic organisations, essential to wider community well-being. If we go to the 2004 National Standards for Heads Teachers, these said, quote, "Schools exist in a distinct social context which has a direct impact on what happens inside the school," end quote. Now that seems like an obvious statement, but I don't think we see evidence within this bill, the way the bill's written, that acknowledges that. And I fear I'm at the risk of quoting a member of your Lordship's House who's not currently in her place, but the noble lady Baroness Morris, when she wasn't Baroness Morris, I'm going to quote her anyway, said, "We have to have community in the school and the school in the community," close quote. The National College of School Leadership says that school leaders need what they call contextual intelligence. They need to be sensitive without being patronising or condescending, focus on the strengths of the local community rather than looking at the weaknesses, which is, I think, is the kind of approach that we often get. So, my Lords, I'm not going to claim that this amendment is the right place or the right way of doing things, but I do hope that we can open up a debate of seeing schools as those civic institutions, not just as machines to produce pupils going through exams and workers coming out the other end. I do just also very briefly want to comment and offer support for both Amendments 8 and 37 addressing the issues of mental ill health. And I think the noble lady Baroness Brenton has already covered the urgent need for this. I think that I suspect I know what the noble lady, the Minister, is going to say in response, that, well, of course, health includes mental health, but we all know that that's not, we don't have parity of esteem, and that's a crucial issue. I think Amendment 37, which we haven't yet heard from the noble lady Baroness Chapman, so I'm slightly preempting this, but I think it's, in the classic legal language, is have due regard to. I would actually say, given the state of our mental health of our young people, you know, the state of mental disorders, which in a few years have gone from 1 in 9 6 to 16-year-olds suffering a thought to be suffering a mental disorder to 1 in 6, that have due regard really is not strong enough language. I don't know what the legal wording should be, but I think it should be at the heart of every school to care for and improve the mental well-being of all of its pupils. That's the kind of language that we should have.